I wanted to start this introduction with a list of qualifications and as a way to prove that I'm qualified to talk about the topic that I'm about to talk. But really, do we need a qualification to talk about what it takes to be a human being? Do we need a qualification to talk to others about what it takes to be a human being that they are? This is what this podcast is going to be about. It is going to be about discovering together, whether with the guests on this podcast or through the process of inquiry, self-reflection, and self-inquiry, about what it takes to be a human being. What does it take on a daily basis? What does it take sometimes on an hourly basis to be a human being? The effort that we expel, the effort that you expel in being a human being. In terms of qualifications, I can start from my economics degree, from being an entrepreneur and having a company in a holistic hair space. I can venture into being a yoga teacher, specific focus on meditation and mindfulness. And as a thing that nurtures my soul, I also host and organize events because to me, when people come together and create something beautiful, this is a beautiful reminder that 1 + 1 can equal 3, that we as individuals coming together can create something bigger than the sum of individual parts. I believe in actions defining who we are, and those actions can vary. Those actions could be small little things that you've done once or twice, or it could be a thing that you do on a daily basis that forms a habit, that forms you as a human being. Personally, I subscribe to what I think is a more helpful notion, is being defined by the actions we take. So whether these are the actions that you do every day, things like your morning ritual, things like your exercise, your habits, the things that you do consistently day in and day out, that helps you shape your personality and character. And this is the very thing that you are then being known by your fellow human beings, by your friends and your family, as well as the small actions that you take maybe once or twice in your life, but that may have a pervasive effect without you realizing it. So the way that I define a human being is the series of actions. Among many other definitions that we're going to employ is that actions give you control, power to define who you are with any given moment that you have. With any given moment, you can take a different action that will then define you for that brief moment of time. And if you continue doing this action, that will become a habit and that will then start defining you. But the most beautiful thing about actions is that you can take them or you don't have to take them. And it is completely under your control. You can define who you are as a human being. You can redefine yourself with any given moment of time. There is one topic that would never really cease to fascinate me, and that has been a theme throughout my life, is the human psyche, is humans, is what we do as humans. And this topic covers endless other related angles. We can talk about relationships, we will talk about spirituality, we will talk about science, we will talk to scientists, we will talk to doctors, we will talk to healers, we will talk to ordinary human beings, as well as those that are normally considered extraordinary based on the qualifications and other labels that they might have. But we always hold a human being as a central subject, a space for you to turn to when life asks you questions that you don't know the answers to, where we can be lost together, or with other guests on this podcast, where you can turn to and feel okay about not knowing what's next and feel okay about something that you are contemplating, or the thoughts or emotions that you are experiencing. Because I want to remind you time and again is that whatever you're experiencing is okay, is it perfectly normal? Because as human beings, with billions of us on the planet, how can we know that what we are experiencing is abnormal, given the fact that majority of us are not talking about our emotions, are not talking about our thoughts, are not talking about what constitutes their norm? So this podcast is an invitation for you to define your norm. What makes you normal as you. Because many times I would be talking to people, to friends, to close people I know, and those are complete strangers, and something would just come out of my mouth that would be completely unexpected, would be something that is almost not me talking about these things, or through talking is how I think. So for me, talking to other people is a way to think. And to manage your expectations, in this podcast, it's going to be a combination of things, either me talking directly to you, to listener or viewer, if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, talking to guests on our podcast. Some of them I'm very excited about to have, and some of them I haven't even met yet. Another thing that is going to be quite different about the podcast is that location. Location and the background behind me is going to change consistently, because I don't think that it is fair to create a podcast about what it takes to be a human being while located in being one geographical spot. It is harvesting different human experiences from varied spots around the world, wherever I am. Normally, I'm based in Amsterdam. However, I do find that travel is one of the most beautiful ways to expand your consciousness, to expand your perception of humanity, to expand your experience as a human being. So the background, as well as the background noises, are going to differ based on my location. For example, this episode specifically was recorded in Guatemala, in San Marcos, near the lake Atitlan, where there is a big population of dogs and roosters, and you sometimes can hear the traffic on the background. However, the point is to collect stories. If there's a specific topic that you want me to cover, if there is a specific notion or aspect that you disagree with, or you have different opinion or different experience, I invite you to let me know in comments to this episode, whether you're watching it on YouTube or another social media platform. I invite you to start a conversation, because often in the conversation that we find the truth, that we discover new angles that we're not familiar. Now, like I said, I wear many hats on a daily basis. On one hand, my daily work is really roots itself in science, in biology, in medicine. And this is the aspect that is one of the lenses that I'm really excited to look at what it takes to be a human being. On the other hand, my experience in yoga and meditation and more spiritual aspect of being a human is a lens that I'm excited to deploy in this podcast as well. And all of it is wrapped in this comfortable cloak of philosophy, of reflecting, of conversation, is accepting that sometimes there could be two opposing points of view, and the point isn't to agree, the point isn't to bring them together to create something that is coherent, but to accept the differences and to invite your brain to think about two concepts at the same time as being equally valid. Now, my intention is to make you feel. My intention is to make you think. My intention for you to feel engaged and fascinated, as engaged as fascinated I am about our human psyche. Another thing that is important to mention is mistakes. I'm bound to make mistakes. I am bound to even hurt your feelings. I am bound to say something that is hurtful, and my intention is never to do so. However, as a human being, I'm prone to mistakes. The other day, I accidentally sent an email to 18,000 people by mistake. I then had to issue an apology email. And what came out of it was a beautiful series of beautiful emails, responses, where I completely owned and took responsibility for my actions to say, I'm sorry, and this is what happened. I received multiple emails, people saying, oh, I've done the same, oh, don't worry about it. There was one email that came through and it was quite angry at first, but through the conversation, we found a way to each other. And the point is not to agree. The point is to learn something. And that is the most important thing in this podcast, is to grow. This brings me on explanation why on emergence. There's one thing as human beings we consistently do. And that one thing is change. That one thing is evolution. We as human beings over the millennia, we evolve, we change. We're endless iteration of the same thing that little by little, year by year, century by century, become better or more suitable to the current condition, to the current environment. And as human beings, also from the psychological perspective is that we're constantly evolving, we're constantly emerging, we're going through cycles of sadness and learning from the sadness, even if the lesson is that we can survive that certain sad period of our life. As human beings, we're constantly emerging, we're constantly redefining, growing and changing. And even though right now you may not feel that you're going, that maybe there is a lack of movement, emotion in your life, looking back in 5 years from now, I can guarantee that you will see the evolution, the emergence that you have been part of at this very moment of your life. Another thing I wanted to mention about the name on this podcast is emergence is that in philosophy, technology, art and science, there is a concept of emergence where the sum of small parts creates something bigger than they are, create something that individually it would not be possible for those parts to be. As human beings, we are made of cells. They create us as human beings, but individually they are a lot less than what we are combined. And also, when we come together, whether it's at a social gathering, at a concert or a march or parade, we create something so much bigger that none of us as individuals would ever be able to create on our own. When I first initially came up with the name Emergence, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with how beautifully it captivates the topic of the podcast. But there's another thing, there is a branch of science and philosophy called emergence. And for that, I want to read a quote and a definition of what emergence is. In philosophy, systems theory, science, and art, emergence occurs when a complex entity has properties or behaviors that parts do not have on their own, and emerge only when they interact as a wider whole. I'm going to repeat that. In philosophy, systems theory, science, and arts, emergence occurs when a complex entity has properties that its parts do not have on their own and emerge only when they interact in a wider whole. So that brings us and invites us to think about that we as human beings consist of bacteria, of molecules, of tiny atoms that individually are just that, are those individual parts. And together they make up you. They make up a human being. They make up your thoughts, the correlation and relationships among those different parts, create who you are, create your emotions, create your thoughts, create your anxieties, your happiness, your joy. And those individual parts may not be capable of experiencing those emotions and taking certain actions on their own. It is only possible as you emerge as a human being. And then there is another part to it, is that as human beings, when we come together and create something, whether that be a parade, a march, a gathering, an event, it has the ability to create something bigger than ourselves. And that aspect of bigger is the emotion and feeling that we take away when we've attended a beautiful gathering, when we attended a concert. That feeling, that elation, that excitement is only possible when we share it with others. In the conversation and in reflection of this podcast, we're going to come time and again, going back and forth in this beautiful dance of ebb and flow from the individual experiences to the experiences of collective, from the experiences of ourselves as individual to experiences of ourselves within the wider society. And constantly keeping the thought that the growth, the emergence, the becoming is the one constant that is always going to be there, that's always going to be here in your life. So no matter what you're going through right this moment in your life, know that through that you will emerge. Which way your emergence is going to go, we don't know. But I can guarantee that whatever the experience is, it's going to change. And that goes both to the sadness and to the happiness. It goes to the so-called positive and negative, even though personally, I don't consider certain experiences as positive or negative. They're either experiences that bring us joy, that bring you sense of oneness, that bring us sense of belonging, that associated with more with emotions that make us feel energized, elated, and happy. And there are certain situations and emotions that enable our growth. We're going to focus on those emotions as a whole because my priority and my focus is that you never stop becoming, is that you never stop emerging. Now, I invite you to subscribe to this podcast in whatever platform that you're watching it. Please let me know in comments any specific topics you want me to cover. I invite you to engage in a conversation with me. I invite you to engage in a conversation with yourself. This space is yours, and I'm happy to hold it for you.